Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This episode is brought to you by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. There's plenty to be thankful for. Your friends, family, and the fact that you can now get NFL Sunday Ticket for only $89. So thank yourself this holiday season and watch every game every Sunday when you bundle NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Sign up now at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Offer ends December 2nd. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games. Excludes digital-only games. Terms and embargoes apply.
This is the Dragon's Lair, in association with the Riverside Sports Bar Newport, an American-style bar with a proper Welsh feel.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon's Lair podcast in association with Riverside Sports Bar. I'm Jamie and joining me as always is Gavin Thomas. How are we doing, Gav?
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. I don't think we've quite had the biblical weather you guys have had down here, but it wasn't very pleasant to play in yesterday, I can be honest.
No, it's been absolutely awful down here. Storm Bert has really caused some carnage down here. So, yeah, pretty awful weather-wise. However, I'm pleased to say that we are joined by another special guest this week's, a broadcasting legend who has played for teams such as Glamorgan Wanderers, Newport, Wales B and Welsh RFC. He's been a player, a coach, a teacher, a broadcaster and an after-dinner speaker. He's a man of many talents, and we're delighted to have him on the pod. It is, of course, Phil Steele. Phil, welcome. How are we?
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, great. And thanks for having me on. Welcome to you as well, Gav. Hello to you. Yeah, nice to be on. I've just come back hot-footed from the WRU AGM, in fact, representing my club, Taftswell, where I'm president, just north of Cardiff. Very interesting morning and afternoon, 3 hours worth. The only thing was I was disappointed they didn't start off the proceedings with the hymn "Abide with Me." You know, I thought that would have been quite appropriate the way we are at the moment.
Oh, we'll chat about that later because I'm sure that's going to be quite interesting, the AGM and the state of Welsh rugby at the moment.
Well, I'm going to ask a technical question, Phil. So a club like Taftswell, do you have a single vote? Is that the same for every club?
Yeah, two delegates go. I went with the chairman, but you get one club, one vote. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever been to an AGM. It was interesting to see things from the non-media side, you know. So yeah, quite interesting. 3 hours of my life I'll never get back, but quite interesting.
Great. Okay, so we'll start as we always do with our guest, Phil. Tell us about your rugby journey. How and where did it all begin for you?
Well, growing up, I think, really, if you grew up in Wales in the 60s, I was born in 1961. The first game I remember watching on telly, live, right the way through, was 1968, Wales-England at Twickenham. It was 11-all draw. Gareth Head was his first try for Wales. A guy called Bab Wanbon, who was a number 8 for Aberavon, scored as well on his debut. Never played for Wales again, went to Rugby League. I remember watching it with my father. It was in black and white, so I would have been 1968. I'd have been about 6 at the time, and I just remember being hooked on rugby from that moment. And then, of course, growing up, the great Welsh side of the 70s, the great Lions side of 71, the great Lions side of 74. You couldn't help but be a rugby fan, you know, growing up in Wales in those days. So I first started playing at St Francis Roman Catholic Junior School in Ely in Cardiff, where I'm from. I'm from the rough part of Ely as well. That's called Ely. So I grew up there in Ely, and I was a ball boy for Cardiff Rugby Club when in my teenage years when the likes of Gareth Edwards and Gerald Davis were playing. So that was quite an impressionable thing on me as well. And I remember just watching Wales in the 70s, the advent of colour television, and those great players of the 70s. They put Wales on the map, not just in rugby terms, but in world terms, as Wales as a nation. Even like as a youngster, 12, 13 years of age, I knew that Welsh rugby was not only special to the rugby world, but also special to the sporting world, and put Wales on the map. you know. And from there, then I played rugby in school, and I've always enjoyed it, and I always found that I was more of a ball player than a sort of a rough and tumbler, and which was quite at odds with the fact that I was tall for my age and 6'3", and I started off playing youth rugby at Glamorgan Wanderers Youth as an outside half, believe it or not, 6'3" outside half. Now these days that wouldn't be frowned upon at all, but in those days, 6'3", if you were playing outside half, particularly in youth rugby.
Yeah.
The other thing was I lost most of my hair by the time I was 18. I used to take my passport, believe it or not, to youth matches with me, so that occasionally somebody would make some quip on the sideline, and I'd clock them, and I'd get in the bar afterwards. I take absolutely true. I take my passport out of my bag and buttonhole them in the bar. There we are, 3rd of June 61. I'm 17, mate. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I actually played for the Wanderers first team while I was still in the youth. But the big change in my career came when I went to Cardiff Metropolitan University. Like a lot of people in Wales, a lot of rugby boys in Wales, I went to Cardiff Met, South Glamorgan Institute as it was then, not because I wanted to be a PE teacher particularly, but because Gareth Edwards went there, JJ Williams went there, Roy Berger, Clive Rowlands, all the greats, you know. And I wanted to play for Wales, not particularly wanted a PE teacher, but going to college was the thing that taught me how to be. It taught me about physical fitness and about training, and almost being professional before our time, you know. And it was at college then that my coach there, Leighton Davis, the lecturer, and the coach said to me, Philip, you'll never make an outside half as long as you've got a in your backside. I think you should go and play fullback. And there we are. I went and played fullback, and that's why I sort of carried on then.
Who else was in that team at that time? I'm trying to, because I can remember John Devereux was there, but he was a bit later than you.
A bit later than me, yeah.
Yeah.
We had Mark Batten, who scored 109 tries for Newport, Wales B cap. Him and I were in the same Wales B squad together. Mark Batten, my college mate. We had people like Kevin Hopkins, who was a Wales centre from Swansea. Geraint John, of course, Wales B international, and now on the Welsh Rugby Union board in charge of the community game. And then people like Hugh Gilson, who was a Gwenpoy from Abertillery, one of 3 brothers who played for Abertillery, all in the front row, who went to Swansea eventually. We had players like Rory McLean, who went on to play for Scotland, Gloucester and Scotland, and some very, very good back row players as well. A guy called Jeremy Evans, who played for London Welsh. Owen Golding went on to play for Cardiff. Rodri Lewis, of course, got captain college, Cardiff. So there was always, and the thing was, even in the seconds, if you played in the seconds or the thirds, Gav, you'd probably be playing with people who'd go on to be internationals, you know, and go on to be first class players. The standard of rugby and the depth was fabulous.
My dad said when it was Cardiff teacher training college in kind of early 70s, played against them for Tredegar and said you didn't know what you were expecting when he turned up, and it was just internationals as far as I could see.
Yeah. And not only that as well, the other great thing was, I mean, I turned up there and I thought I was a bit of a kiddie because I played for the Wanderers youth, the Wanderers first team while I was still in the youth. And I turned up there, and the first day of college, I found like on the course with me, there was like something like 11 people who played for the Welsh secondary schools the year before. A couple of them played for Neath, a couple played for Swansea, a couple played for Llanelli, and I was a real little fish in a big pond then, you know. But it was fabulous to just, because you basically were in a tracksuit all day. You were doing lectures in gymnastics, dance, rugby, football, swimming. It was like being a professional player, really, in the amateur era.
Yeah. So who were your rugby heroes then growing up, Phil? Were there any particular players you looked up to?
Obviously, all those great Welsh boys of the 70s. The Gareth, Barry John was a great favourite of mine. As a fullback, JPR, virtually all of those great Welsh players. Of the other ones, probably my hero of all heroes though was when I became a sort of an attacking fullback. wasn't a Welshman at all. It was Andy Irvine, the great Scottish fullback who I got to play against once. He was a fab, because he was sort of my he seemed to have my philosophy on the game sort of married up with his. You know, he was never a great one for defence, but give him the ball and he just loved attacking. You know, and that's how I would I was great with the ball. I wasn't particularly one for I would tackle if I had to. I wouldn't shirk tackling, but it wasn't something I got pleasure out of. Now, as JPR would tell you, he says in his book that he got making a great tackle gave him more pleasure than any other skill on the field, and that wasn't me. I was more of an Andy Irvine man, and my hero as a player, or two fullbacks who were my hero as a player in Wales were first of all Roger Blythe, who played for Wales in the 70s. He's involved with the Ospreys. He was a fabulous attacking fullback, and he was like me as well, quite tall, and my other there was two others. There was two lads at Llanelli, one called Kevin Thomas and one called Martin Gravel, and they were fabulous fullbacks, lovely footballers, and I saw a bit of myself in them. Not in size or stature, but in just the way they approach the game. I love to run with the ball, and so did they.
I've played fullback for a bit, but not for very long. It strikes me though that the position of fullback has changed quite a lot, Phil. From the days you were playing. When you see the pro game, do you think the role of the fullback has changed a lot? In terms of what they do.
Yeah, incredibly. I mean, when I played from 79. First game for the Wanderers first in 79. Last game for Newport first team in 89. So 10 years then. And you were very much, the last line of defence. It would just be you at the back there to field all the kicks. Now everything is played as a back three, isn't it?
Yes.
The positions you're interchangeable. You have your back three. It's almost a back four when the scrum half drops back these days. So it's much more of a collaborative game. Whereas when I played, you were very much the last line of defence, and catching and kicking was your bread and butter. Tackling not so much, because I've gone through games sometimes, even at first class level, where I've only made one or two tackles if the back division are performing right with the shuffle defence, and but it was that sort of, you had to be there in that commanding position, the last line, command the midfield, and be able to be that rock under the high ball and clear your lines. It was still primarily a defensive role, even though I consider myself an attacking fullback, and I loved the ball in my hands.
Yeah. Well, you're a proud Ely boy, as we all know, but you do have a connection to Gwent because you played for Newport RFC, the Black and Ambers. Tell us about your time at Rodney Parade, Phil, and how you look back on that.
Yeah, interesting how I got there as well, because I'm a Cardiff boy.
Yeah.
Cardiff and Newport. It's one of the oldest rivalries in rugby, but it's a friendly rivalry, Jamie. It's a lot of players have gone between both clubs, and I'd say the rivalry is different to the rivalry between Newport and Pontypool. The rivalry between Newport and Pontypool, and Newport and Ebervale, and probably all the Gwent Valley clubs, is a lot more caustic than the rivalry between Cardiff and Newport. That's the way I found it anyway. How I got to Newport was an interesting one, because I'm a Cardiff boy. I never ever thought I'd play for the Black and Ambers. But my final year of college, we played Newport on a Boxing Day. We lost 55-15. I can still remember the score. Stuart Barnes was playing fullback for Newport. Yeah. Keith James is an outside half. Now, Keith James had been an outside half at Cardiff when I was a ball boy in the 70s. So he was a bit of a hero of mine. So to play against him, be on the same field as him, that was a bit of a thrill. And I can remember somebody going down injured. It might have been Stuart Barnes, and I'd gone up just to see, opposite number. You go up and see if they were all right. And Keith James came up, and I said, "Is he all right?" And Keith James said, "Yeah, he's fine, Phil." And I thought, good God, Keith James, who's the Newport outside half, knows my name. How does he know my name? I felt really chuffed,
Yeah.
Anyway, 55-15 we lost. Now, being a fullback, as Gav will probably tell you, okay, you might lose by 50 points. But I never enjoyed a game so much in all my life, even though I was having high balls to deal with, running it back at them, I had a really good game, and a really enjoyable game. And you might think that's difficult to understand in a 55-point defeat. But to me, the result was obviously I wanted to win. You always want to. Yeah. But the day out and the 80 minutes was almost as important as the result to me. I mean, I used to think, well, you train all week, you train hard, I train on my own a lot. If you can't enjoy it on the field, what's the point? And you can't win every game. So enjoyment was a big. Anyway, so I had this game on Boxing Day, and a guy called Bryn Williams came up to me afterwards and said, "We know you're with the Wanderers, but if you'd like to sort of come and have a go at Newport, you'd be very welcome." Well, I didn't think anything of that. And then in the August, I was to play cricket, and another Gwent sort of angle here. I played cricket for Wenvo, a little village just outside of Cardiff, and we were playing Abercarn welfare cricket. And in that side was a couple of old rugby men from, one in particular, you might remember, people of a certain age, played for Cross Keys, was a guy called Barry Peebles. He was a good batsman for Abercarn. A lot of people watching will probably remember that name. And we're out in the field. We'd scored about whatever it was. And we're out in the field. And I'm fielding it on the boundary. And all of a sudden, jogging, doing obviously it's a Saturday afternoon in the summer. I see this guy jogging. And I thought, this guy looks fit. And he had a pair of really, really scarlet red Adidas tracksuit bottoms. And I thought, this bloke is somebody. Those tracksuit bottoms I recognise, and they're Welsh Rugby Union. That's the Welsh Rugby Union tracksuit, And as he approached, I saw it was none other than Spike Watkins, Michael J. Watkins, Spikey Watkins, who was the captain of Newport. And he said to me, he said, "Hiya, Phil," as I'm fielding on the boundary. And I thought, blimey, Mike Watkins, God, I used to ball boy when he was playing for Cardiff. He's the captain of Newport. How does he know my name? And he said, "If you'd like to come over, we'd love you to come over." He said, "We're looking for some backs." And I did. So I went over to train with Newport. I trained with Newport and Cardiff in the same week. And people say, "Well, why did you join Cardiff? Why didn't you join Cardiff? Why did you join Newport?" And the reason was I found Newport a much friendlier club than Cardiff. Mike Watkins was brilliant with me, great captain. You had Charlie Faulkner. It was just more of a sort of like a down to earth, less star-studded club, And I ended up joining Newport then.
Yeah. So do you have any standout memories from your time in Newport, Phil? Any particular matches or moments which stay with you?
I think there was one before I joined. The one that stuck in my mind before Newport, which I will remember, bring to memory if you don't mind. I was a part of it on the 1st of September 1982, the first night of the season. The Wanderers, our first fixture was always Cardiff, and I remember we beat Cardiff 15 points to 9. The first time the Wanderers had ever beaten Cardiff, and I was able to play in the game because the college term hadn't started. Because once you went back to college, you had to play for the college, and college would play all the first class clubs, as you remember. And it was we beat the Cardiff 59, the first ever win over Cardiff, and people like Sir Tasker Watkins, the VC, the war hero, was in the changing rooms afterwards in tears at his delighted that his beloved Wanderers had beaten Cardiff for the first time ever. And that really struck home to me what it means to be deeply entrenched in a club, So that was the one. But the other one, the one that stuck in my mind most of all for Newport was, again, a Cardiff game. It was something like my fifth game for Newport. And that stuck in my mind as well, because with the Wanderers, you play all the first class clubs, but you might play, say, Bridgend on a Wednesday, and you might play somebody like Clifton on a Saturday, and then you might play Pontypool on a Wednesday, and then somebody like Taunton on a Saturday. So you play all the first class clubs, but interspersed would be like easier games, with perhaps English teams, whatever. My first 6 games for Newport were Pill Harriers, opening the season game. And then it was something like Pontypool, Neath, Swansea, Cardiff, and the Barbarians, right? Saturday, Wednesday. And it was like, I said to my mate Mark Batten, I said, "Matt Batts, this is like Man United. Playing these, if you've come from a team like the Wanderers, to play these bigs, and every game was a big game." So anyway, we lost to Swansea, we lost to Neath, we drew with the Barbarians, 18-0, and but we didn't lose by much, and we could have won all the games. But I think we weren't getting the results. And Spike used to say in the change rooms afterwards, he said, "Now, my boys, we'll give somebody a hammer in one day. And early October, so about the 6th game in of the season, we played Cardiff at Rodney Parade, and we beat them 34, something like 34-22 or something like that. But Cardiff scored 2 late tries. So for a while, we were 34 points to 7 up. Yeah. And at the time, it was the biggest ever win that Newport had ever had over Cardiff, which was something. And I played in that. Now, a winger, a guy called Timmy Harrison from Rumney in Cardiff, scored a hat-trick and didn't play much for Newport after he had shoulder trouble. But I remember coming into the change rooms after the game, and not the change rooms, the Rodney Hall, the bar area, and some old chap with a Newport supporters tie on, and he said to me, "Philip," he said, "I've been watching Newport since 19 31, whatever. I've seen all the games against Cardiff. They used to play each other 4 times, of course, in those days. Yeah. And he said, I've never seen a win like that over those old blue and black so-and-sos. Well done. And that struck me. That struck me. Yeah. Even though I wasn't a Newport boy, that struck me about as you, God, that's something, you've done something there today, Phil. Not yourself personally on the field, you're just part of a team. To be in that team, and that's the sort of thing that struck me, particularly as I, not surprisingly, became a broadcaster later on, because of the love of the history of the game and the stats and the traditions. That I'm very big on that. So you couldn't have picked on a better person to say that to.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you finished your rugby playing career as a player coach for Welsh RFC in the early 90s. But I read somewhere that you said the coaching wasn't for you.
No, I wasn't. No, in my book I say that. Yeah, Nerves of Steel. Yeah, coaching wasn't for me. Which, when you think, I've been steeped in the game. I saw my first game when I was 6 years of age.
Yeah.
I could name you all those Welsh sides from the 70s. I've seen all the games. I did 4 years at college, trained to be a PE teacher. I played at first class level. I taught the game at under 11s level, right up to under 18s level. You would think I'd know a little bit about coaching, but it's just when I was the player coach at Welsh, I just don't think tactically. Now you give me a bag of balls and a set of cones, and I'll entertain you with drills for hours and hours.
Yeah.
But when it comes to tactics, and they used to say to me at Welsh, we used to go on the field, and I'd be the player coach at fullback, and they said, "What are we going to do here, Phil?" And I would say, I said, "Look, get on with it. It's my day of enjoyment as well," sort of thing, Yeah. And I've been pitch side at scrum 5. There's the players, there's the touch judge, and then there's me. I'm the closest thing to the action. Seen loads and loads of games up close, and I'd be through the earphones. I'll hear Jonathan Davis say something like, well, you can see the Ospreys there are not committing many players to the ruck, And I'd be thinking, well, I'm only 5 yards from that ruck. Well, why didn't I spot that? No, it's just I don't think tactically, even though I can quote you stats of who scored who, when, and what they did here, and when it comes to like actual on-field tactics, it's just not part of me. I'm not a deep thinker about the game in that way. No.
Coaching and teaching are different things, aren't they? I taught long time as well, and I've never really gone with adult coaching. I've coached under 6s up to under 11s, wherever. But there is a difference between coaching and teaching, which I don't always think comes across. But I also don't think that being a good player necessarily means you're going to be a great coach either, does it? It's I think coaches they're cut from different cloth, particularly good ones.
Yeah, I found at senior level as well. The other things that go along with a coach, like I'd come out in a blooming anxiety attack if I had to phone somebody up and say that you're not in the team for Saturday. I just hated that. Now a lot of coaches thrive on that, don't they? Right? You're not good enough, son. Put your finger out. No, I'm not built that way. I'm from a caring profession, teaching profession. I find it hard to be sort of cutthroat, and we'd have had 45 players on the field if it was up to me, because I wouldn't drop anybody. But I was quick to recognise that I did it for 2.5 years, and I quickly realised that it wasn't for me. And then virtually straight after that, I went into broadcasting then.
So as mentioned earlier, you was a teacher for 25 years, I believe.
25 years, yeah.
So you taught PE and special needs.
PE and special needs. I did 10 years teaching PE. This is another interesting thing, Jamie, about the sort of coaching thing, which probably marries in. I taught PE for 10 years. And even though I wanted to be a PE teacher, because I thought it was the best job you could have, because Gareth Edwards was one and JJ Williams and all this, and you went to PE college. I got bored with it very quickly. I got bored with being in a tracksuit, chasing a ball around all day, taking 3 or 4 double games lessons of rugby a day, going over to taking a team after school, going over to train with the club in the night. I got bored of it very, very quickly. And then I changed I did a diploma in Northern Hampshire for Gwent, did a diploma in Caerleon College in special needs, and I became a a special needs teacher, which was much more suited to my personality. And how you see me, if anyone who's ever seen me host a dinner or speak at a dinner, or saw me on Scrum 5 in those days, or hears me on the, will listen to me on the radio, that is not that different from what I was like in front of a class of special needs kids, like a bit larger than life, you know. Humor was a big thing, and enjoying it, try and make the kids enjoy themselves, and making learning fun. And that's what I used to try to do as a broadcaster, to try and make rugby accessible and not to be too technical and too serious.
Yeah. It must have been challenging, but also pretty rewarding, I would guess, Phil, being a special needs teacher, you know?
Yeah, it was a comprehensive school. I was in Lewis Girls' School in Ystrad Mynach. And I did it for 15 years. And there was a special needs class in every year. So I used to about 10 kids. So I used to take the kids for everything, geography, history, RE, music I taught one year, English, bit of everything, PSE, bit of everything. And teaching those kids it wasn't particularly what you taught them, it was how you were with them, how you made them feel, was the thing, you know. And my philosophy was that if I could get those kids to if the 1 hour they came for maths with Mr. Steele, if I could get them to enjoy that hour and enjoy being in my company and learning something as well, but predominantly enjoying my lesson and enjoying coming to school, that was feeling I'd done a big part of my job there, because a lot of my children came from quite some poor backgrounds. You know, I'd be the only stable male role model in their life. I used to get called dad in the classroom not infrequently, which was quite emotional, you know.
Yeah.
And so my philosophy of teaching was to make those kids feel good, you know, to build their self-esteem. So I could be teaching them maths, music, English. I could be teaching them Arabic, you know. It was all about making those kids feel good, you know. And when I used to hear them running down the steps into the Terrapin building that I had, room 72, and if they were running down and they burst into the classroom, "Hiya, sir," I used to think, well, you're not doing too bad here, Mr. Steele, you know.
Yeah.
No, everything you say just resonates deeply with me there. I was a teacher and head teacher in special needs schools for 20 years. You know, it is something else. And I did a couple of years in mainstream schools, and I thought, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
You know, and then discovered special needs, and it refreshed my career essentially, and kind of changed my life in some ways.
Yeah, one of my best days I ever had was when I was teaching PE, Blind Girl Comp, my very first job in Aberdeen, 22 years of age, straight from Cardiff Met, straight after joining Newport. And one of my lads I had who played hooker for me in my under 13s and under 14s rugby team was Stuart Cable, the ex-drummer of the Stereophonics.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to meet, I was only in the school 2 years, and I took a promotion then to go to another school. Anyway, years later, I was hosting a gig in the CIA in Cardiff, as it was then. It was for the Honda Hall of Fame. They were inducting the number 8s into the Hall of Fame. So people like John Gwilym was there, ex-Newport player, Scott Quinnell, Mervyn Davis was there. And I had this tap on my shoulder, and I turned around and he said, "Hiya, sir, do you remember me?" And it was Stuart Cable, you know.
Yeah.
And I was still teaching then. I didn't give up teaching till I was 47 in the year 2008. So Stuart had just left the Stereophonics, and I asked him, would he fancy coming out to the school to meet, not the whole, it was girls' school, he'd have been mobbed, you know, just my special needs kids. And he came up just before Christmas that year and met all my special needs kids in the classroom. And he was, he signed a photograph to them all, and he was fabulous with them. And it was lovely afterwards, because my special kids, who used to be the downtrodden kids in the school, often bullied, you know, because they obviously from poor backgrounds, they weren't academic, so they were sort of the downtrodden kids. For once in their life, they were walking around with signed photos of "To Mary, love Stuart Cable, kiss, kiss, kiss," you know. And for one day in their lives, they were queens of the prom in school. And that was one of the best ever days of my teaching career, which was nothing to do with teaching, really. It was just the fact that I'd known Stuart, and he'd said hello, and I worked with him quite a bit then, when afterwards, because he did quite a bit for the BBC. So we were on a quiz program together, and yeah, it was very sad when he went on.
Yeah,
that is incredibly sad for him. Your book, Phil, you're really honest about your challenges with mental health.
Yeah,
You're exceptionally honest, and the bits I read of it just kind of again really resonate with me, because the anxiety of letting people down and all those things, and the way you talk about that is kind of really powerful.
Yeah.
Why did you think it was important to put that in your book? Because you could have done a book of anecdotes, which people would have loved.
Yeah. Well, when somebody we're talking about that anxiety and not letting people down, it comes from lack of confidence and lack of self-esteem, I think, Now, why I suffered with that, I don't know. But I suppose if you're a ginger, bald, freckly kid who's the tallest in the class, who loses his hair at 18, it's going to probably do something to you along the line. But I was never confident. And when this publisher sort of got in touch with me and said, "Do you fancy writing a book?" I said, "Well, me write? Why would people want to listen to me?" So the lack of confidence straight away, And he said, "But you're on telly, people. You've got a lot of followers. You've got nearly 40,000 followers on Twitter. People are interested in what you have to say." So I against my better judgment, I did the book, and my whole sort of raison d'etre for writing the book was because whenever I've told people that I suffered with depression, I've had 3 bad bouts in my life. Thankfully, thank God, I've been well now for a long time, for 15, 16 years, although I still take medication. When I used to say to people I've suffered with depression, they would say, "Get out. You of all people, Steely. You must be joking." And so it is at complete odds with the public persona, or the people, not even the public persona. When people just meet me, people in the family who, friends of mine would say the same thing. They cannot believe that somebody could be as outgoing and as outwardly successful, perhaps, or as outwardly confident as me could have it. But I did. So that my whole reason thing is that, if it could happen to me, it can happen to anybody. Winston Churchill, Ben Stiller, Princess Diana, Isaac Newton. We're in good company. It started off, though, the very first, the cause of it, or the trigger for it, I won't say the cause, is that the trigger for my very first bout was a rugby injury, playing for Newport in 1984, playing for Newport against the Wanderers, my very first club. Up at the Wanderers, we'd won the game 25-4, and in the 7th minute of injury time, I tore a knee ligament and was put into plaster and off work and everything. And that's when I had the first bout, and the first bout was really bad. I had psychosis, which is very, very serious. Of course, I didn't know what it was. This is 1984. You couldn't talk about it. God, if I'd have said gone over to Newport and said, "I can't train tonight, Charlie. I've got suicidal thoughts," that wouldn't have gone down particularly well.
There was stigma in those days, Phil, wasn't there?
Yeah, and somebody would have said, "Well, Steely, if you're suicidal, what size boots are you? You size 10, I'll have them if you top yourself." It was that sort of black humor, Yeah. Now, of course, I'd have had a psychologist and psychiatrist and everybody too. But the interesting thing, since the book has come out, Gav, you were saying you've got experience of it. Since the book has come out, the amount of people I've had to me say, I've had that, Phil. And I say in the book, I could pick you an ex-international team of players who've suffered with depression and other forms of mental illness, Delmy Thomas, for example, who captained 3-time Lion, who captained Llanelli when they beat the All Blacks, has had it and has spoken about it. Clive Norling, the great referee, has had it and spoken about it. It's Ray Gravel was another one. It's very, very common in sports people and rugby players. And one of my sort of a lot of the people that I hear from and have a coffee with and try to help. I won't mention names because it wouldn't be fair, but a lot of them find it difficult to adjust to life after finishing rugby. Yeah. And I spoke to somebody about to an ex-player. Again, I won't mention his name. And I said, "Well, what is it in particular that you miss?" He said, "Well, I miss." He said, "I miss the wage. First of all, earn more money than I ever earned in my life. I miss the banter in the change rooms. I miss the fact that we've got structure in the day. We're told where we have to be, told what we have to wear. I miss the adulation, the fact that I am somebody, the Welsh international player, and all those things sort of well up and can cause mental issues, after retirement.
Rugby can be a defining part of your life, kind of whether you've played for Wales or kind of. I play and I've always played at terribly low levels, but and I was saying to Jamie before we came on, I played yesterday. I really shouldn't have. My knee is not in a good way, but it's being able to stop, and part of it is what do you do when you don't do the thing you've always done?
That's right. And it is such a big part of your life, Gav. You were saying that, and even if you could be playing for. I was with Newport. Obviously, a lot of my identity was tied up in being you're the Newport fullback, and you're in with a shout of you're in the mix for a cap, and it is, and particularly as I lived and breathed the game, it is part of your identity. And the psychiatrist who I eventually went to see years later, he said to me, the reason that you had that after that rugby injury is because you were so close to getting to where you wanted, to a Welsh international then, and that's taken away from you, and it's like a bereavement. He said you've lost part of yourself, your soul. As the rugby player, you can't play rugby for a while. You're out of the reckoning again. So he said it's the same as going through a bereavement, like losing a job or even losing a family member.
Yeah.
And I think your honesty is really kind of important. I discovered I found it easier when I talk to people about it rather than managing it, and kind of I think that honesty, and I think you're right, because we are from a culture. We're talking about those things, and I'm a bit older than Jamie, and you're a bit older than me, Phil, but we're not really from a culture where sharing those things is typical, is it? It's my dad,
particularly rugby culture.
Yeah, my dad would always say, like, if I was off school, he'd say, "What's wrong with you?" I can't say anything wrong. Whether it was a cold or anxiety or whatever, unless my leg was falling off, he wouldn't understand why I wasn't going in.
Yeah, we had a thing at Newport. Charlie Faulkner, who was the coach, the former great Wales loose head, Lions loose head, Pontypool front row man, who was a great character and a great guy, great family man. Charlie, a lot of people saw this gruff exterior but didn't realise he was a really, really, really deep family man, and quite a deep person as well. And Charlie would have this thing where if you couldn't train the full session, he would say you were carrying a hamstring, or you had a bit of a knee injury, or whatever, arm in a sling. Charlie had this thing, and it's not politically correct now, but he used to say, "We'll do a cripples training then, look," he'd say. In his Gwen drawl, "Look, but do a cripples training, look," he'd say. Cripples training meant, and again, apologies, it's not politically correct, but that was the language of the time, the language of the subculture. And what Charlie meant by that was, if you had a hamstring injury, you couldn't train, but like walk a couple of laps or jog a couple of laps, so you're still part of the squad, I never went to him and said, "Charlie, I'm feeling suicidal. Can I do a cripples training?" But I sometimes wonder what his reply might have been, But that was the culture of the time, and it was very much a macho, get on with it, man up sort of culture. But after the first bout of depression, which once it lifted, and that was the other thing. The first time I had it, I didn't take medication, and one of the reasons I didn't take medication was because of the manner, my mum was quite old school. She used to say, "You don't need medication. You're a school teacher. You're the Newport fullback. You get out of it on your own." And I
didn't she flush them down the toilet or something?
Yeah, I did flush them down the toilet. Yeah, I did. It says in the book, I flushed them down the toilet because that was the sort of thoughts at the time. And so depression lifted, but it left me with terrible, terrible anxiety. Right, and I'm not just talking about feeling a bit, anxious about you've got to make a speech or something, or there's an inspector come to see you. I'm talking about being in the changing rooms before we went out to play Abervale. And Glenn George, who was the captain at the time, doing the old, they used to do the old 1 to 10 warm-ups in the change room. You didn't go out on the field, you did it all in the change room. And Glenn George saying, "Come on, we're going to do this. Come on, we're going to do that. We've got to get into the mirror." And I was nearly in tears with a claustrophobic panic attack, just looking at the changing room door and thinking, please God, let that door open, you know. And I couldn't think anything about the game. I couldn't think about what my role was or what I was going to do. All I could think about was, please, just open that door. Just open that door. And again, you couldn't articulate that to anybody.
No.
And another one was goal kicking as well. That again, you couldn't say anything about. If I can remember being at fullback, and if I was the designated goal kicker for the day, I remember being at the back there and watching play go down to the 22, and I'd be sort of saying a little silent prayer to myself, please God, don't give a penalty away now. Don't give a penalty to Newport, because I knew the captain's going to ask me to kick for goal. And I just, and then the captain would say, Steely, do you fancy it? And you're not going to say no, are you?
Oh.
And I remember remember used to dig a little tuft?
Yes.
And I'd put the ball in the middle of the tuft of the tee, and I'd be taking my walk back, and I'd be saying, please God, I know this is not going to go over, but can you make it go long and high so that if people watching in the stand can say, well, good effort, Steely, you know? That was it. And I'd come up and I'd strike the ball, it would miss, and I would think, well, I knew it was going to miss. And the worst thing was, Gav, if I did kick one, instead of thinking, oh, you've got your boots on today, Steely, my little voice would be saying, you lucky bugger, you're not going to get the next one, you know? That sort of thing, you know?
It's imposter syndrome, isn't it? That's what they call it nowadays. The idea that I'm not good enough to be here. But clearly you were, because you don't get to be Newport's fullback by luck.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but so after that first bout of depression, although I got back after the knee injury, although I got back physically fit, I was never mentally, I was past it then mentally at the age of 23, 24, really. Never had the confidence, and I was a confidence player. And I was a running fullback, and I needed to feel good, to feel confident in myself. This is where Mike Watkins was very good. Spike Watkins, he's a bit of a Marmite character. You either love him or hate him, and he did come in from a lot of stick for some of the things he did, but I loved him as a captain. He was brilliant. He wasn't an academic, but he was a very, very good amateur psychologist. And he'd say to me before we went out to play, he'd say, Steely, the Welsh selectors here today, you're the best fullback. I wouldn't trade you for any fullback. And I used to think, God, if Spike Watkins is saying that,
Yeah.
And he knew exactly, and he wouldn't say that to everybody.
No.
Some people he knew needed to kick up, but he was to me, he was a fabulous motivator. Just knew how to motivate me. Very, very, very clever, very, very good amateur psychologist, Spike. And I would always speak very highly of him, and I've always been very fond of Spike.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a legend, isn't he, Spike Watkins? So many people will know you from being a pitchside reporter for Scrum 5, of course, which you did for 14 years.
Yeah.
How did you get into broadcasting then, Phil? How did that opportunity come about?
Well, when I'd finished playing, when did I finish playing? 92-ish, something like that. And the game had gone pro. A couple of years later, the game went pro. And the leagues had just started. That was it. The leagues had just started. And in the Premier League, the top league, there were 16 teams, and it included teams like Dunvant, Abertillery, teams that all the usual ones, Cardiff, Newport, Swansea, Letley, Neath, and so on. And so there was 8 teams all kicking off at 2:30 on a Saturday, 8 matches, 2:30 on a Saturday, and BBC Wales didn't have enough staff commentators on the staff to do the job. So Gareth Davis, who was the former Wales outside half, who I knew for having played against him, asked me would I like to do a bit of reporting on games just as a freelancer on a Saturday. So I went and had a bit of a screen test, a voice test, and they took me on their books. And my first game was a Gwent derby. My first game as a radio commentator was Newbridge against Newport in September 1995. Good game. I think Newport won by about 8 or 9 points. Big crowd at the welfare ground. Great game to do first up. Yeah. And it basically that's it. Yeah. And it basically just grew from there. Then eventually, because I'm into music, folk music is my big thing, and I sing and I write and I play the guitar. Yeah. They asked me would I do a couple of a stint as a songwriter on a program called the back page on a Saturday that Eddie Butler used to present. And I used to write and sing a topical song every Saturday morning on the show. So that grew. And because of that, then a couple of Radio Wales general programs asked me would I do some stuff. And they gave me a Sunday morning program called Phil Steele's Big Easy, a chat show. And then I went part-time in school. That was 2001. So at the age of 40, I went part-time in school. Of course, I was available then for more broadcasting because I was only doing 3 days a week as a teacher. And then it just sort of snowballed, and I gave up teaching in 2008 at the age of 47 to become a full-time sort of freelance broadcaster. How I got it, that was how I got into broadcasting. How I got into the pitch side was, and this is, a lot of people come and ask me for advice. How do I get to be a commentator? How do I get into broadcast? How do I get to be a pitch side reporter? And the answer is a lot of it is luck.
Yeah.
It's getting a little break. The best thing I ever did as a broadcaster on Radio Wales was one year they lost the TV contract to ITV Wales, so there was no rugby on BBC television, and there was only about 8 teams. I think they cut the Premiership to 8 or 10 teams, so there wasn't that much radio work going. So they asked me would I do some football, and I said yes, I'll do some football, no problem. So I did football for a while. For one season, I covered virtually every Saturday. I covered the League of Wales, the Cymru Premier football. Going to places like Aberystwyth and Newtown and all that. And it wasn't my first choice, obviously, but it was broadcast. It was keeping you on the air. And if you can make Newtown against TNS 0-0 draw sound good, you're learning your craft all the time. There's nothing against Newtown, by the way, and TNS. But it enabled me to sort of to develop my craft and kept me on the air. And then all that experience, then you get better and you get better, and you become the sort of the man they can't do without in a way. You become the man. The first phone call, right? We need a commentator. This, give Steely a ring, he'll do it. That sort of thing. And that's the case in point. So when I say to people ask me advice to get into broadcasting, I say it's not a straight road. It's not like doing law where you do a degree in law and you do your LPC course, then you train with a solicitor. It's not a straight path. It's a very winding path, and you have to take your chances and sort of put yourself out there almost. And my break with the pitchside reporter's job came. I was lying in bed this is around about 2005, lying in bed one Sunday morning, just having a lie in, and the phone went, and it was a producer from BBC Wales, and they said that Graham Thomas, who was the pitchside reporter at the time then, well-known journalist, had gone down with illness, and they needed a pitchside reporter up at Leeds to do Scarlets against Leeds in the Anglo-Welsh Cup. Can you get to do you fancy doing it? And can you get to BBC Wales by 8:30? Jonathan Davis will take you up with his driver in his car. And so as a freelancer, you're programmed to say yes, You say yes, whatever the job is, and you worry about the job afterwards. After you've said yes, and I did, and I went up there, and I did the gig, and I think they liked what I did. They gave me a few more gigs then, and then after 2 years, I think it was about 2007, maybe 2008. They asked me would I do it full time, and the first thing I did was phone Stuart Davis, who was former Swansea Wales number 8, who was the incumbent, and I said, look, they've asked me to do it. Just want to let you know. And he said, Steely, great. He said, I've got lots of other commitments, but I'm sure you'll do a good job. And that's how so it was like a lucky break got me in there. And what I tried to do then was, when I got the job, I thought to myself, right, pitchside reporter, first of all, you've got access to all the players, the players who they let you have access to. You've got the best seat in the house. You get into the ground early. You're meeting with all these different people who make up the whole day of a rugby match. I'm not just talking about the 2 coaches. I'm talking about the guy on the security on the door, the groundsman, the guy who does the kit. And I thought, I want to do this job differently. I want to try and get over to people, not just what's happening in the game, i.e., well, Adam Jones has just come off there. You can see him in the dugout there. He's got a knee injury, not just that sort of thing, because commentator can tell you that.
Yeah.
But what I tried to get over what it was like to be at the game. So I would do things like colour pieces, they call them in broadcasting. I would try, if I saw somebody of interest in the stand, I'd go and have a word with them. It'd never been done in broadcasting before. I was the first one to interview the coaches during matches. And it was all done. Di Young was my first interview. And I used to hear Gareth Charles, the commentator, say, there's Di Young. I wonder what he's thinking. And I thought to myself, right, well, I'll go one night now. I'll go and find out what he's thinking. So I went to Di Young before a game at Cardiff. I said, Di, look, I'm pitchside, yeah. And this is where it helps to have been a player,
Yeah.
And I said, if I can get up to you during a match, is there any chance you can do a quick 40-second interview with me about, how do you think the game's going? No problem at all, Phil. And it was all done on trust. No, it's in the contracts of coaches. They put the actual cans on them and they commentated interviews. This was all done on trust. Knew I wasn't going to stitch him up, and I'd ask him a question. And of course, everyone in the broadcasting world went, wow, this has never been done before. How is he, And then Sean Holly did the same. Lynn Jones would do the same. And that's how that took off. The other one thinking then about getting people in the crowd. And I just think to myself, right, if I've watched this game now and I'm going back to Taftswell Rugby Club, somebody's going to say to me, have you been to the game, Steele? Yeah, what was it like? What am I going to say to those people? I'm not going to say, well, in the 42nd minute, Adam Jones came off with a knee injury and he's doubtful for next week. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, oh, I won a bad gig. Hey, do you know what I saw at the game today? Steve Redgrave, the rower. That's the thing. Yeah. And your mate would say to him, well, what was Steve Redgrave doing there? Oh, he was doing. So if there was somebody of interest, and down at the Osprey, I mentioned Steve Redgrave, because Steve Redgrave was down at the Ospreys one night doing something to do with diabetes, and he stayed on to watch the game. So he was a
former rugby player himself. Steve Redgrave played for Henley.
Yeah, his boy is quite a useful rugby player as well. So people like that, Geraint Thomas, the cyclist, I had him as a halftime guest, just to sort of like throw a little bit of interest in it. Now, of course, I used to get criticised by journalists for not being a hard-nosed journal. Well, I'm not a hard-nosed journal. I'm a teacher. I'm from a caring profession. Yeah. I used to get a lot of stick from people because why are you interrupting matches? We want to know more about. But I think when I used to go around the clubs speaking, I think just the reaction I got, more people were sort of favourable to it than not, because it hadn't been done before and it was just something different. The other thing that was very popular that people liked was I used to do this thing called the Good Feud Guide.
That's right, yeah, I enjoyed that.
And because I knew exactly the people who I could picture who the audience was. Now, I'm not saying like sort of 13-year-old school kids don't watch Scrum 5. They do, but the vast majority of the audience was made up of 50+ people, mainly male, your rugby club people. The guy I see down Taftswell Rugby Club, the guy you see in Abercombe Squid Rugby Club, whatever. And I knew that if I could relate to these people, the audience, it would be a good thing for the program, and it would get them interested in the program. So I came up with this thing, Steely's Good Feud Guide, and I'd pick them. I'd go through all the fixtures before, and I'd go through the fixtures, and I'd say, well, so and so we got Kylie in playing Newport High School boys on Saturday, Division 2 East, or the Umbridge on the Usk clash, for example. Aberdare are playing Abercombe Boy, the Fun on the Cunnon clash, the Llandaff North against Llandaff, the Cow and Snuffers bragging rights. The Cow and Snuffers was the local pub there. And then I'd mention a few other things, and maybe I'd say so-and-so is playing his 200th game or whatever. And it became a sort of thing. I wonder who Steely's going to mention this week, perhaps he'll mention my club, that sort of thing. And enabled we were showing a professional match and talking about professional rugby, but it showed that we were able to connect with our audience as well, and there's more to rugby than just Blues against Dragons or whoever it was. Or
I think that was always your strength, Phil, because you were that bridging kind of feature between professional rugby and the game that came before it, and the game that's still there. And I think sometimes we forget.
That,
the community rugby is still essential.
Yeah. Another thing I would always do was, particularly when we did the under-20s, we used to do the under-20s a lot, and the man of the match or the captain would come out. And when the man of the match would come out, I'd say to him before we went on air, "Who's your club?" "Well done." I'd say, "Who's your club?" And he'd say, "Oh, Dragons." I'd say, No, your club." "Oh," he'd say, "Risca. I started at Risca." And I would say, start the interview, "Well, I bet people in Risca will be delighted to see this. You put them on the map, because everybody comes from somewhere. Nobody just gets jettisoned into the Welsh team. They've all played club rugby somewhere along the line.
I think we've lost sight of that. That we talk about the Welsh teams, we talk about the regions, but there's no Jack Morgan, there's no Dewey Lake without the Riscas, the kind of the Rumneys and the everyone else of the world.
Bryn Aman and Cwmtwch in
I couldn't remember the clubs, but but I knew they were West Walian boys.
That's Clive Lawrence would be turning his grave if I didn't mention that. Upper and lower Cwmtwch. That is.
No, you're absolutely right, Gav, with the community aspect. And that's why I think is sad about Scrum 5 now, because yes, it is still going, but now it's just a pure highlight show. There's no analysis. Phil Steele is not there giving this good food guide and going around the local rugby clubs, which used to do, Phil, wasn't there, and Rick O'Shea. And it's a shame we don't have that anymore. Do you miss it, Phil?
Yeah, I sort of miss... I miss the fact that, whether it's me doing it or not, I miss the fact that it's not being covered.
Yeah,
I miss the fact that the clubs are not getting a mention. Radio Wales either have stopped covering the Premiership or the Super Rugby as it is now. They stopped covering that last season. I used to do a game virtually every week, of that. Obviously, finances are not what they were. The audience these days are more for digital services. That's why they've got 2 podcasts now going on BBC Wales. So I sort of can understand why they've done it, but you lose your connection with your audience at your peril, and you lose your connection with your core audience at your peril. So that would be my sort of advice.
Absolutely.
I think that's Welsh rugby's issue at the minute, isn't it? If it's so caught up with its own self-importance that it's forgotten who it serves. Which is the people who go to Taftswell or the people who go to Bryn Aman every week.
Yeah, the other interesting thing with that, Gareth, on the horizon is what would happen to the Six Nations. It's the last Six Nations under this current contract now, and rumours are that it might well go off terrestrial, or might well go off the BBC. And it'll be interesting if it does go off terrestrial. Yes, it'll bring more money into the game, which is great. The money, rugby needs every cent that it can get, but at what cost to its visibility and to the interest then to people as a whole?
I always think of it like the story you told. Your first game, 6 years of age, watching it on TV with your dad.
Yeah.
My first game I remember watching was a Barbarians game, I want to say, against someone in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't seen that on BBC, I wouldn't have seen it. Would I have my love for rugby? Same for you. And that's, we're going to lose an audience, aren't we, by not projecting to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the concern, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's talk about Wales then, Phil. In particular, the game on the weekend. What did you make of it?
What did I make of it? First thing I will say, I think this South African side is one of the best sides of all time.
Yeah, definitely.
Not just the team they had. I'm talking about the 2 teams they can put out.
Yeah,
they could put out 2 world-beating sides. So I think they're up there with the New Zealand side of '87, possibly the England World Cup winning side of 2003, the Grand Slam winning Wallabies of '84. They're up there with the very best of sides. That's the first thing I'd say. In fact, I'm thinking of resurrecting one of my old after dinner jokes that I think they'd even beat the great Welsh side of the 70s, because most of the Welsh side of the 70s are in their 80s now, aren't they? That's something of bringing that joke back. So that's the first thing I would say. So they are one of the great sides, but the Welsh team performance reflected where Welsh rugby is.
Yeah.
basically at professional level, certainly. The players have been thrust into that Welsh side who are barely ready for regional rugby.
Yeah.
Necessity. The game has been underfunded. There's no question of that. The game has been underfunded. There needs to be a lot of investment into the academies, to get facilities, advice, professional coaching in there. Because the unions have been starved of money, should we say, one of the things that has taken a hit has been the academies. You only have to look at the under-20s results over the last 4 or 5 seasons to see that the quality coming through is not there. So I think there's got to be a rebalancing of the funds so that the professional game gets more investment, you know.
And how worried are you, Phil, about the state of Welsh rugby at the moment? Because it is in crisis, isn't it? On and off the field. We all know about the problems with the WRU region struggling to be competitive. You mentioned the underfunding, grassroots suffering. What do you make of the state of the game at the moment?
We're on the crest of a slump.
Yeah.
Yeah, grassroots. If you sort of go down to grassroots level, I'm the proud president of Tafswell, and I know that many clubs are struggling to raise teams. There's not the commitment, there's not the interest. There's some of it is societal. You know, when we were, I come from an era. I'm 63 now. I come from where. Never mind about being paid to play the game. I'd have paid you 500 quid to have that Newport first team shirt on my back. You know. Yeah. I come from that different era where you crawl over broken glass to play rugby, whether it was for the Wanderers youth or your school or whatever. Now there's not that urgency to play rugby. There's not that commitment among people. That's probably a societal thing. My other big worry, sort of further down the levels, is the fact that the game is so physical, and there's that massive drop-off rate from 16 to 18. There are about 8 reasons, Saturday jobs, more kids go to university, girlfriends have more of a say in things now these days, empowerment of women, which is great. There's about 8 factors, but one of the main ones is, to my way of thinking, is the fact that the game is much more physical than it used to be, and that jump from, say, youth rugby to senior rugby is just massive, and a lot of kids give up. Anecdotally, this is not empirical evidence. This is anecdotal evidence, but I do speak to a lot of people, rugby wise. There's quite a bit of parental pressure, particularly from mums around about 16 or 17, to say, I don't want you playing rugby anymore. I don't want you getting hurt, that sort of thing. Yeah. And another thing, there's so many other things they can do rather than play rugby. There's CrossFit, badminton, swimming, judo, all these other sports. So that is a big worry. The one thing that hasn't been addressed that I think the union could do would be to get rugby again in the primary schools. I first started playing when I was 9, 15 aside in the primary school. All the primary schools in Cardiff were all Catholic primary schools. Anyway, I went to a Catholic school, sort of played rugby. And there was just hordes and hordes of people being introduced to the game. And one of the things I think the union could do would be to make sure that every school in Wales, every primary school in Wales, has some sort of rugby coach going in there once a week, a hub officer, not to coach them, scrummage or anything, but just ball skills, just skills that are general ball skills, but through a sort of a rugby lens, if you like, make it enjoyable, and because in any hierarchy, the wider the base, the taller the apex. But it is a worry. I can see the nth degree of it would be, and I say this in the book, the nth degree of it would worry me would be that eventually nobody plays rugby for fun, and it's just a college, schools, academies, colleges game, like American football, we lose club rugby altogether.
Well, it's starting to happen to a degree, isn't it? My dad played for Tredegar for many years, and Tredegar don't have a side anymore. Because even when they were in the lower reaches, people were still expecting to be getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that is my big worry. I think if on the international level, I think if the tilting of the funding goes to where it's needed, and I'm not saying for straight to regions so they can up their wages of their, and everyone suddenly gets on 200 grand a year. I'm not saying that, but to fund it where it's get some good overseas players. When we were in sort of the Gatland era, we had players like Xavier Rush, didn't we? David Lyons, the all black row from the Ospreys, Tia, Marty Holler,
Justin Marshall.
Yeah, Justin Marshall, 81 cap all black.
Yeah,
those players can make a difference. We don't see those now because we can't afford them, or the regions can't afford them. I'm not saying the union haven't got the money to afford them. So I think if that is put in, but I don't think it'll be a quick fix. I think it'll be a while yet. And my personal opinion is I would stay with Warren Gatland, at least for the end of the Six Nations. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Warren Gatland. So you think he'll be coach going into the Six Nations?
I think I would keep him. One, because his record doesn't show at the moment. But if you look back at his general record and his general record with Wales, he's the most successful coach Wales have ever had. Mm-hmm. Hands down, it's not working for him at the moment. But purely on a sort of like a technical issue, there's not going to be coach. If they sacked him now, there's not going to be the coach that you want available. So you're probably going to have an interim coach, caretaker coach for the next 6 months, so at least for the Six Nations, at least. You're not going to get Pat Lam or Ronan O'Gara to come in, by Christmas, sort of thing. No. It's going to take a while. So, I would keep Gatland there rather than get rid of him and then have to bring in an interim while you search.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I said we chat you for 20, 30 minutes and we kept you for an hour, Phil. Sorry about that, but it's been a great chat.
Get the hatchet out.
No, I really appreciate you
joining. There's nothing that needs editing. It's just, it's been a pleasure listening to you.
It has. Gav, anything else now before we let Phil go?
No, absolutely not.
Brilliant. Phil, thank you so much for joining us. It's really appreciated.
It was a pleasure, and Jamie, and keep up the good work you do, because podcasts by people like you who are the lifeblood of the game, who care for rugby in all its forms, not just the Dragons, not just Wales, but everything that goes on below. It's important that outlets like yours keep going. So keep up the good work and keep fighting the good fight, and come on the port.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. We're not the BBC, but we try our best. We had great guests on this pod, and we have, and you've been one of them. So
absolutely,
really appreciate that.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, cheers, Phil. Thank you. Ta-ra now. Bye now. There we go, Phil Steele. Lovely guy. Enjoyed that. Great chat. Just a reminder that we are available wherever you get your podcasts from, on the Wrap YouTube channel. And if you can, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, just like Charlie has done. So we've had a lovely review, Gav. He says, "What a joy to have an uninterrupted hour of rugby coverage from a purely Dragons perspective. It's a chance to digest and decompress after the weekend's game and listen to the guys to figure out what went wrong. It's often a tough task being a Dragons fan, but it's also a cathartic listen." So we are a cathartic listen for... I've often said this pod is like therapy, isn't it, for long-suffering Dragons fans?
I feel we should start charging people like £60 an half hour or whatever therapy costs. It's we're far too polite helpful for our own good. No, it's true, and I think that's very kind of you, Charlie. But it's catharsis for us as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're a long-suffering Dragons fan, this is the place to be. So, we really do appreciate the lovely feedback and reviews we get. And if you leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts, I promise you will get a shout-out on this pod. So, anyone wants to leave a kind review, they will get a shout-out. Thank you very much for the feedback. So, quick bit of news then. Ben Carter, he's had successful surgery on his knee, but he's going to be out until February. That's a big blow, Gav, isn't it? But
it is.
Losing our captain. He played every minute of every game in the first block. So his leadership as well is going to be missed. But we do have plenty of options. We got Matthew Street, George Knott, Steve
Yeah.
Cummins, Joe Davis, and then we got guys like, Shane Lewis-Hughes and Ryan Winman could fit in there if needed. And the
Barney,
academy, Langton
Langton
Cryer,
Cryer, yeah.
Nick Thomas as well, Newport
Yeah.
RFC lock, Wales under 20. So plenty of options, but yeah, just very disappointing. So we wish Ben all the very best in his recovery.
Absolutely.
There's no Gwent Rugby Roundup from you, Gav, is there? Because
Stormbird
took
did
the
for
tour.
it, yeah. Eberville Newport was cancelled on Thursday, and then kind of the community game was decimated. If I have missed a result, please let me know. But I couldn't find any results. The only game that appeared to be played in Wales yesterday was RGC versus Swansea.
Oh dear, yeah. Weather really did take us toll down here, doesn't it? Okay, then that's a quick rugby roundup, isn't it?
Indeed.
A quick word from our sponsors then. Riverside Sports Bar, the place for live sport and great food. The Xmas menu is available. They got pigs in blankets, Christmas burgers, brie bites, cranberry dip, Christmas dirty fries, which I had today. Oh, it was so good. I sent you a picture as well, Gav. I had to share that with you. It was very tasty.
It looked fantastic.
Yeah, and they got Christmas pizzas as well. So they're located next to the river in Clarence Place, Newport. Or for more information, you can find them on Facebook or on their website. So, Gav, URC, it's back. Dragons are back in action. Away to Cardiff on Saturday tea time. So this is going to be Philo Tiatia's first game as Dragons interim head coach. It's a new era. Hopefully the injury list has come down a bit. What are our thoughts heading into this one? Because we know about the record against Cardiff. It's not great, to say the least. But how do we feel heading into this one? It takes on a new meaning this game, doesn't it, with Philo in charge? Because you're thinking, what's going to be his selection? Is he going to give certain guys, like, are we going to see more of Harry Wilson, for example? Are we going to see more Steve Cummins? What guys he's going to favour? How do you think of this?
I don't see how wholesale changes can take place, personally. Because we've got what we've got, and I'm assuming Philo is a sensible man. He knows, he has coached. He's been a coach at lots of clubs. He'll know that if he's got an idea of a particular kind of rugby, he'll know whether or not those players can play it. But what I would like to see is just something discernible, definable. What does
There's no identity, is it?
Yeah, what does his rugby look like? Because, I'm not going to criticise Dari because I liked him as a coach. I particularly liked him as a man.
As a person, yeah.
Yeah, and, so I'm not going to say, but, it didn't have an identity.
No, we talked a lot about the Gwent way, didn't we? The Gwent way of playing, but we haven't really seen it. I think the thing for me heading into this game is we have got to banish those awful memories of what happened on Boxing Day. Because that was an absolute disgrace. That performance was one of the worst Dragons performances I've ever seen. To concede, 45 points at half-time. That's just completely unacceptable. So they owe it to the supporters, to their sponsors, to put in a competitive performance. It's likely that we lose to Cardiff because we always do. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
And they're in good form at the minute.
They are. This is the Everton-Liverpool derby, isn't it? It's the equivalent of that. It's one-sided. I don't think the rivalry is there compared to other, teams. It lacks that bite and that intensity and that real true rivalry.
I don't think Cardiff see it. It's a bit like in football, I follow Southampton as well as County.
Yeah.
And it was a bit like when Bournemouth were in the Premier League team and Bournemouth would say they were rivals with Southampton and Southampton would be like, no, you really aren't. And it's a bit like that. I don't think Cardiff see us as rivals in the same way that we see them as rivals.
Yeah.
Cardiff probably hate Ospreys and Scarlet far more than they hate us because I don't think they feel we're important in the grand scheme of things. But I want us to be, and I want us to prove it to them.
Yeah.
The issue is now, though, I think rugby has soaked all my positivity out, and whether or not at the minute, just all the kind of the professional teams that follow, you think, oh God, this is hard work, isn't it?
Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said, because I feel rugby out, just because the last 12 months, what's happening with Wales, Welsh rugby as a whole, the stuff going on at Dragons. I'm not optimistic about this next block.
No.
Look, I may be wrong on this. I don't see how getting rid of Dye at this stage of the season is going to turn things around.
No, we've
I
not
really
a plan,
don't.
and we haven't got a plan. We just brought Philo in. Well, fine, but and people say, "Oh, you have to support your club through thick and thin." That's fine, we do. But you can
Yeah,
also
through Finn, mostly.
yeah, but you can also be realistic and say, "I'm a bit irritated with this." Because it's all right to be irritated with it. They're being paid to do something and they aren't doing it. It's a bit
Yeah.
like being an Oasis fan, isn't it? Two great albums. By about the sixth album, you're thinking, "Oh, boys, it needs to get a lot better." And we're in that territory with Dragons. It's
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. I should be really excited that, Club Rugby is back and we got big derby this weekend, but I'm just not. That's just my personal feel. Like I said, I do feel a little bit rugbyed out with it all. And like I said, I'm not really optimistic about the next, but I could be wrong. I love to see us turn the corner in terms of performances and results. The good news is we do have players coming back. So we should be seeing the likes of Funaki, Elliot D, Dimitri Arhip really needs to come back. I know he's
yes,
36 now, but honestly, he gives us a bit of a
solidity.
platform, a bit of solidity at
Yeah,
scrum time. But I'm just interested to see really how Philo selects the team. Like
yeah.
who's his 10, the halfbacks, the centres. Is it just going to be the same as what we saw on today? If so, again, what
It's
was the
not going to
point?
be hugely different, is it?
No, it's not. But we have to keep the faith, I guess, don't we, heading into this next block? But let's
Yeah,
see.
well, I'm not going to sit you and say I don't care, because I do care.
Oh, of course, yeah, we do care.
But also, I think it's perfectly acceptable for both of us as Dragons and Wales fans to say it's a bit disheartening.
No,
You can find
absolutely.
other things to do. And I took great joy from that South African team yesterday because it was a delight to watch. But on the other hand, it wasn't a delight to watch them kicking the stuffing out of us.
No. Welsh rugby is just like I said, for me, it's been draining these past 12 hours. As a
Oh, yeah.
Dragons season ticket holder and like Wales as well, the things that's happening in Welsh rugby off the field, it's
Well,
tough.
what they've done to the women's game, all of them
Oh,
should
I
be out
know.
of a job. It's outrageous, and
How is Nigel Walker still in a job? How is this
I,
guy still in the job?
I shared something that they weren't even training backs moves for the women's team. They were being expected to play as it,
Really?
yeah, as it goes. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something I've
Mm.
heard.
Well, anyway, we are playing Cardiff, so like I said, I'm optimistic given the record, but I suppose the big focus is the bigger picture is this next block, isn't it? Let's put in some competitive performances. Let's give Europe a good crack. I like to see us get a good run going in the Challenge Cup. Again, it's going to be tough, but two French teams at home, Newcastle away, it's doable.
Yeah.
And we got Lions as well, but hopefully we were qualified by the time we play the Lions. But this is going to be a very interesting, but I think it's going to be a very tough block of fixtures for the Dragons.
Yeah, either we're going to come out of it going, it's not as bad as we thought, or we're going to be, it's exactly as bad as we thought.
Exactly. It's going to go one or two ways, isn't it? But
Yeah.
best of luck to the team in Cardiff on the weekend. Okay, Gavin, thank you for joining me. Thanks to our guest, Phil Steele. He was brilliant, Gav, wasn't he?
No, that was great. And when we said to him, about half an hour, I knew he was going to be more than a half an hour because he's a man who just captivates you with the way he talks and the things he talks about.
I could have talked to him all night. I thought he was terrific. He tells so many wonderful stories, and it's easy to see why he's so popular with the Welsh Rugby public, isn't it? Really good guy. Yep. So thank you, Gav. Thank you, Phil. Thank you to our sponsors, Riverside Sports Bar. We'll be back very soon, but until then, take care and goodbye.
That was The Dragon's Lair in association with the Riverside Sports Bar Newport, an American-style bar with a proper Welsh feel.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.